Again, make sure that's going. Okay. Welcome back, everybody, to day 2 of UXPA Minnesota's Human Error Workshop. Just want to start by apologizing again for any confusion with the calls. I know we sent out the Zoom information to join this call and then a separate Google Calendar invite to try and get a RSVP for our happy hour last night. So if that caused any grief, I do apologize. And luckily you're here and today, or you'll get some value out of this later on if you're watching this recording later. So we'll just get right into it today. I'll hand it over to Sangam and he'll lead us in another hour of discussion and learning. So go ahead and kick it off.
All right. Well, thank you so much. Welcome back, everyone. Day 2. Thanks for joining. I'm trying to see. Yeah, the group is a little bit smaller today. Looks like we have 16 folks. That's and maybe more folks will come in. But since the group is smaller, if you have a question or a comment, feel free to unmute yourself and kind of speak up, and happy to kind of pause and have a discussion since the group's a little bit smaller today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my video. Feel free to do the same. Yesterday, we may have left like a slide past this one, but just to kind of recap, we were talking about reasons for errors. There's 2 that I wanted to cover specifically related that might be pertinent in the UX field. So work situation factors and performance factors. So just recapping the work situation one, we looked at the Amazon example here. So if you're in Saudi Arabia, Amazon does a pretty decent job of making sure that they do not violate population stereotypes. So if you are from a population that reads right to left, they've got their retail website organized that way. So it looks a little different from what you might be used to, but wanted to kind of share that. So we'll continue on with the reasons for errors and then kind of jump into error types, and then actually into the day 2 material, which will be a few slides away, but we'll get there. So a little bit more on work situation factors. These often can be traced. I mentioned this yesterday, I think briefly, back to poor system design. We looked at that example of that sentence, right? There was an error in the sentence itself, and I was surprised some folks got it right away, but it said that 84% wouldn't, right? So instead of trying to, of course, we're not building puzzles or riddles by any means. We're building tools most of the time. So when we're doing so, we want to make sure that we don't build in error-inducing situations. So something to keep in mind. And then, of course, poor organizational structure also leads to a lot of error. We saw that when we were doing our research on the Macondo incident in the Gulf of Mexico. And so I think this is the thought that I'm trying to push on a little bit, and we talked about it yesterday. I think there was a comment related to aside from pure negligence, there's several other errors related to the Gulf of Mexico incident. But I think what we're trying to uncover here is that human error is not typically the adequate root cause in most cases. So you might end up at human error as an issue, but there is opportunity to dig further and identify, okay, what is actually causing those human errors? There's a lot of pieces related to how people are designed, our own limitations, our own capabilities. From a human factor standpoint, we see that, we think about it that a lot, and the same can be applied to when we're designing software interfaces as well. So moving on more to the other reason for errors, performance shaping factors. Examples of this include, but are not limited to, inadequate information or lack of information. We saw that, of course. I'm sure there's plenty of that related to not reading the correct readings in the Gulf of Mexico incident. Increased number of choices. Of course, all of us have probably read the JAM study, where there's researchers showed that when there's too many choices, it's hard for us to make a decision. And of course, when it's difficult to make a decision, the likelihood of error also increases. Policies and procedures is another reason for errors to occur. I remember when I worked actually in the energy industry, there are several incidents that we could trace back to policies and procedures, especially when procedures were referencing other procedures. And we would go back, and if there was an incident that occurred, we'd say, okay, why weren't you following this procedure? And the people would typically say, this procedure references another procedure, which references another procedure. So because of that, and a lot of the tasks are time sensitive. So when you have to reference one procedure upon the other, people are less likely to actually use them. And of course, that could lead to an error in itself. So, and I touched on this one a little bit, task complexity. As the complexity increases, the likelihood of errors increase as well. A few factors related to personal performance shaping, it could be external or internal. External are relatively easier to control, and internal is a little bit difficult. Example for external, I was on an interesting project where they were trying to redesign the gate experience of checking into a facility. And there was a display that we wanted to put up, a pretty huge display. Truck drivers needed to be able to see this display as they were entering the facility. And we designed everything great, except during the midday sun, it was hard to actually read that display. There's a lot of glare. So that's an example of an environmental factor that maybe might not have been considered, that ended up yielding an error, which was not intended by any means, but because folks couldn't read the display. Internal factors are a lot more difficult to control. Stress, motivation, right? That's all personal. So it's very difficult to control those when you're designing. I want to touch on stress just a little bit. There's so much. I feel like we could do a separate workshop on stress alone, but just a couple items that I just want to touch on here. Stress degrades human information processing. So under stressful conditions, of course, it's difficult to take in the right information, process it anyways because of lack of attention, because you're distracted by whatever the stress agent might be. And of course, that increases the likelihood of error as well. And as I mentioned, the stress negatively impacts information processing. And so anything we can do to, if we have control of our external factors, or if we're aware of the external factor, we can design around it. And so the example I gave you earlier of the display, the solution is a pretty simple engineering solution, just providing a cover over the display, so that the cover was kind of like an awning, so it provided a shadow on the display itself. So even in the midday sun, you could read the display with ease. So environmental factors could be vibration, speed, heat, lighting, psychological, could be anxiety, fear, fatigue, frustration. So as we all probably know that very well. One quick connection, and the reason I wanted to touch on stress related to memory. Stress reduces the ability to encode new information from short-term to long-term memory. So that just means it's, this is another great example of why recall is easier than recognition. Of course, in a stressful situation, trying to remember information and store it into long-term memory is just very difficult. There's also research done on how noise impacts spatial visualization. Noise stress has shown to be the greatest effects on tasks that require spatial visualization. And I wanted to mention that because I'm not sure if anybody is working in augmented reality space or even virtual reality. I'm sure there's some folks doing research in that area, but it'd be super interesting to see what things you might have learned, right, when you're designing for virtual spaces or augmented spaces. But this is something good to know, that if there's some maybe ambient noise, or if there's a noise component to whatever it is that you're designing, maybe it's a game. In that case, it's not a tool, so I think maybe that's not as big of a deal. But if you're designing an augmented reality training, for instance, this might be an issue that you should think about, is that when you introduce noise as a stressor, the ability to judge the distance of space around you is difficult. And I think the research on this was done related to screaming a child while merging onto high-speed traffic. And it was difficult for the person driving to judge how far the vehicle was from them. Long-term memory seems to be less affected by stress. Experience offers an advantage of retrieving long-term memories under stress. I was incidentally watching a video last night on YouTube, there was a tanker. This is I think a Air Force tanker, an MC-10 refueling an F-15 jet, fighter jet midair. I don't know if you guys have watched those videos, but there's a lot of precision. I can only imagine a lot of stress involved with trying to glide a multi-million-dollar aircraft to get refueled. But the reason that I was watching this video is because they had the conversation between the tanker and the fighter jet recorded, and that was presented live while they were refueling. And it was so funny to hear the people back and forth asking, do you prefer Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts coffee? Do you guys drink coffee up there? Do you guys drink coffee in the fighter jet? No, don't have any coffee here. And, in that stressful situation, these guys were just having a regular chat and refueling the vehicle while traveling hundreds of miles an hour. So I think that's a great example of how, if you've practiced something, if you train for something enough times, stress has a less of an impact. Even in a, the situation has a less of an impact, even if it's stressful, because you've encoded into long-term memory. So something to keep in mind as well during design. So how can you manage stress? Well, you can integrate several controls into a single control panel to reduce the effects of selectivity attention. Not sure if this solution was employed on Macondo, but maybe they could have benefited from that. But as we know, there were multiple things that were wrong with that situation. We could reduce noise effects if spatial visualization is required. And then, of course, we don't want to always rely on training, but if you do training for stressful conditions, just so you can familiarize yourself, the user, with inconsistencies, just so they get used to it. So no matter what the situation is, they're able to kind of work through it. Next up, I want to talk about types of error here. And these should be familiar, but I just want to go over these kind of at a high level, excuse me. And if you were to research kind of types of error on your own, there's so many different types. You can kind of categorize them within similar categories. So I'll touch on a few of these. But and one thing to note here is if human error is something that you and in your project that you want to measure, it's good to have these error types defined properly and metricize these, like track them, right? Whether you track them throughout the product lifecycle or once it's deployed into the wild, if you have them defined properly and if you're tracking them from the very beginning, I think it's easier to measure. And maybe if that's one of your goals, right? Maybe measuring human error is not one of your goals. That's fine too. But if it is, I'd encourage you to definitely define and make sure have them categorized properly so that there's no issues with tracking. But here's one: omission. One type of error, this is when the user skips a portion of the task. And you can imagine, maybe if you're under stress, if you're under a time crunch, this could happen. Error of commission, when you perform the task incorrectly, and this can happen also of many reasons. One thing, when I was first introduced to error commission, I was surprised by how many variations there are within it. Like there's an extraneous act, an act that was not part of the task that you end up doing. Sequential task performed out of sequence. I've seen a lot of the sequential act type of error appearing when there's multiple steps required, and when those steps are required within a time frame. This error appears quite a bit. Time, and then you can have a time error specific within itself, where the task is performed outside the appropriate time frame. And then, of course, qualitative error, performing appropriate action incorrectly. As I mentioned, there's mistakes, another label for this. It's interesting, Don Norman, I don't know if you've read his early work when he was a professor. I think he taught at multiple universities in California itself, I believe it was. He did a lot of research on error and design associated with error before the Nielsen-Norman days. And I think he's labeled some of the errors like mistakes, slips. But again, these may sound familiar because you've read the definition somewhere else, but it's called maybe something else besides mistakes. But example here may result from shortcomings in perception, memory, cognition. I think we've seen a few examples of those. Slips, another type of error, decision making, or problem solving error. This, of course, occurs. You can look at the human information processing model and realize that this could occur when you're trying to perceive information, when you're trying to make a decision, and you end up making the wrong decision because you have the wrong information coming in. Mode error, this is a contextual error. This is when a great example of this, I know a lot of cars are keyless now, but when you had a key, you use a key for a car and turn it on, maybe you had it in park, maybe you had the radio up loud and you're distracted, didn't realize the car was already turned on, and then you tried to turn the car on again, and you'd hear that clicking sound because your engine was already on. You're trying to turn it on. So that's an example of mode-based error. And I have another example here coming up that I can share with you as well. So how do you remediate these errors? Well, you can minimize operator requirements that demand short-term memory under stressful conditions. Two-step authentication is a great example of this. It didn't used to be where if you had two-step authentication, your phone would automatically recognize the passcode that you would get from the server, right? You used to have to be able to type that in. Of course, a lot of times you weren't under a lot of stress when you're doing that activity, but nonetheless, users were being forced to recall what that code was. And of course, if you have great memorization techniques, it's not difficult to do. It's easy to remember two numbers at a time versus the entire number, right? I think we all had our hacks for that, but now two-step authentication is super easy because once the code comes in, you can just click on the box and your phone automatically pulls that number in, which is really nice, reducing the likelihood of an error there. So another way to remediate error is allow errors to be reversible. The recycling bin is a great example of that if you've accidentally deleted something. And don't keep operators guessing. Design dialogue to yield closure. This is one thing I've seen so many times. I've worked in retail, now e-commerce, banking, energy industry. And whenever we're designing software, there's a lot of times where we're asking the user, asking our customer to input some information. And for some reason, we don't tell them the status of what that input was. Like, oh, okay, we got your information. You're okay to move on to step 2. Or here's the status of what you submitted. Or what happens next, right? It's so interesting that such trivial things get forgotten. But whenever you're designing something and asking the user to input anything, think of that as a conversation. And then think of your software as a human, right? Like, so if the person that your customer inputs information, it's like they've started the dialogue, and your software, your product needs to yield the closure of that dialogue because that other person, your customer, is expecting something in return, right? That conversation is a two-way street. So make sure, we have to make sure we're not forgetting to talk back to our customers. More on error remediation here, minimize perceptual confusion. The great example is this: when you have containers that are the same size and same shape, you might mistake it. Like sugar and salt gets mistaken quite a bit. Make completion of action visible to the operator. Interlock systems is another way to remediate error, and not being able to take the key out of the ignition unless the vehicle is in park. And then minimizing multifunction controls that have different functions. This is an example. This is from 2019. I'm not sure if it's still like this, but on Netflix, you could add a movie to your playlist. You can see there kind of in the middle, my list, and you can tap that button. And a check mark would appear, meaning that it's been added to like a playlist for you. And I could not figure out for the longest time how to remove it from my list. And I actually had to go back and go to like the main menu, I think it was. But then I found out that same button that you add could be used to remove the same movie. So, but when you have multiple functions hiding behind the same control, likelihood of error there occurring also increases. This is an example of mode error. This is on Best Buy. If anybody works at Best Buy, sorry, but maybe this is good feedback for you. But it's interesting. The recently viewed button here, or drop down, I guess, doesn't really work well when you're in unauthenticated mode. I actually went and tested it. You feel free to go in and test it as well. Let's say you go and view something like an iPad or something. It didn't work the first time. I tried it again. It worked. But then after I viewed an iPad, I went and looked at some headphones and tried to see if it popped up in the recently viewed. It did not show up there. Only the iPad showed up. So maybe it only can remember one item if you're unauthenticated. And my understanding is if you're authenticated in, so if you sign in, the recently viewed functionality works much better, but that's an example of mode error. So the question then becomes, do you even make that functionality available if it's not working well in the unauthenticated mode? Maybe, probably, because maybe there's some other function that you could introduce here that's better for the unauthenticated experience. But if it's there, then it should work as expected, just so people aren't making errors. Here's an interesting one. Let's get a little bit of engagement going on this one. This is an example of well, it could be. So let's spend some time on this. If you have a browser open, go ahead and open one. If you don't, I want you to go visit the restoration hardware page. I think it's rh.com. You can just type in restoration hardware. And then I'm going to give us 2 minutes. Tell me how you would find, just put down the steps you would take to find the bathroom lightings that are on sale. Let's see if anyone can do that. So let me go ahead and put 2 minutes. If you're not on your browser yet, go ahead and click, open it and type in, I'm pretty sure it's rh.com. If not, just search for restoration hardware on Google. And the website is pretty incredible. You'll see there's like video playing right away. But yeah, in 2 minutes, let's see if anyone can find bathroom lighting that's on sale. And then if you do, just drop the steps you took to get there in the chat. All right, I'll get our clock going. Nice. Well, that was really fast. Lighting, bath, all lighting. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct. So you didn't even need any mistakes. Rima, did you make any mistakes? Any slips? No. Elizabeth, no.
No, it's kind of like, making that decision. Do you go the bath way or the lighting way to try to find it?
Right. You had to pause there for a sec, right? To kind of figure that out. What's interesting, I think the top header shows up twice, right? When you go in. Let me I'll pause this here. Looks like everyone kind of got it. When I did it, let me see. Since we're just a few of us here, let's go check this out. I thought this was interesting. And I know Restoration, they've I think put in a lot of money on their actual retail experience versus their online experience. So it makes sense. Lighting, bath, sort by price. Yeah. Low to high. Oh, okay. Yeah. So how I went in here. Oh, first of all, I thought this video was pretty cool. But when you look in here, there's a sale option. I saw people click on that. So if you click on that, yeah. So this menu appears up again, and you can see save 70%. Blah blah blah. But I said lighting, so you go to lighting, bath, and you'll see final sale. I think. I don't know if I kept clicking bath and didn't notice the secondary menu on the right. Yeah, that's the issue there. Okay. All right. Hopefully we had some fun with that. Let me go back into my presentation. I built my presentation on Canva, by the way, which is awesome. You just have to push a number to get the timer up. I think that's pretty slick. So if you want to ever use Canva, it's a great tool. So key takeaways here. What should we remember? Human error is often not the root cause. There's a lot of design issues, procedural issues, the way information is presented that tends to lead to human error, and the ways we can reduce the likelihood of that error occurring, if we're paying attention to how humans, we process information, how we remember it, recall it, and how we use that information to make decisions based on our mental models. I think, and all of this kind of points to the value of, and speaking in the UX world, of research, especially in a discovery phase, and then continually testing those assumptions in the design phase through usability testing and other methodologies, card sorting. And then once it right before it deploys, testing it with a beta group, right? Because you're trying to see, is there anything that I've created that's going to induce an error or error causing situation, trying to minimize those as much as possible. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that the value of design thinking and a rigorous research and design process will help us really reduce the chance of an error occurring. So day 2, we're on the day 2 material. Yay. Okay. So we're going to talk about latent conditions. I'm sure you've heard of the term latent conditions in the human factors field. It should not be anything new, but I wanted to kind of look at it in the context of UX. And I've talked about UX a little bit, user experience, for those that aren't familiar with it. And UX typically is all about, right, how do we design a product that fits our customer? How do we work backwards from a customer so we're building something better for them that's really usable, that's engaging? There's different facets of UX design. Another way to really look at UX is say, you know what, we want to really understand the problem and eliminate any risk associated with that problem. And you can think of risk as being as usability issues, for instance, or your customer not being able to achieve a specific task associated with the tool that you've built. And another piece of that is also UX could be thought of as a way to reduce the likelihood of a human error. And not all errors or error-inducing situations are obvious and straightforward. Some underlying causes are hidden. And that's what I want to kind of focus on. These underlying causes that are hidden, we can call latent conditions. And this happened to me when I was trying to build this deck. So here's a great example. I was trying to, and this is a screenshot of a slide I was trying to build. And I had, I'm sure you used the Grammarly tool as well, and that was on. And turns out the overlay from Grammarly was preventing me from accessing my own text. So I think this is a great example of a latent condition, unintended condition, right? Situation. I'm sure the folks at Grammarly didn't anticipate this, right? The way they positioned, oh, it's on the lower right corner of a text box, but guess what? If your text is there, it prevents you from actually accessing the text. So I had to, and I can't move it. That overlay, you cannot move. It's static. So I had to guess where my cursor was and kind of work backwards from that and hope that I typed in the right information. So great example of a latent condition. Let's define latent conditions. It's a hidden condition that might cause the next usability issue, something that's not directly perceivable, not intended by any means. A mistake's waiting to happen is another way to think about it, but it often results in design that probably hasn't been tested very well. So more reason to do a lot of testing with your products. And typically this is a possible cause for human error. Some examples of latent conditions I want to touch on today are related to poor design, lack of clear labeling, too many options, egress access, lack of preventative maintenance, fatigue, and then staffing levels, believe it or not. And then you probably noticed the image that I had. I want to show you. This is on Robinhood, the Robinhood trading app. You can see here in the middle, it says introducing stock lending. Congrats. Now you have access to passive income, blah, 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 right? And you have that great little alert there, notification, if you will. You click on that, and then it says program unavailable. So it's very interesting that they're saying that there's something available to you, and then when you try to select it, it's actually not available. So this is also another great example of a latent condition. So either you should be explaining why it's not available, right? Maybe there's a qualification piece that the user needs to qualify for. That's not clear. If the program truly isn't available, then why is it appearing as a notification or alert? There's no reason to alert someone if there is no message behind it, right? That seems very obvious, but that's another example of a latent condition. Here's an example of the Volkswagen website, example of poor design, dialogue that does not yield closure. I talked about that earlier. If you search for pay my loan, which is something you have to do if you have a vehicle and you decide to pay online, there are no results that are available on the website. But if you type that in Google, you can find it a lot easier, which is unfortunate. And the reason you don't find it here is because the payment method is not tied to the main retail website. You have to go to like I think it's vwcredit.com, which is outside of the main retail website. But if you're a first time buyer of this vehicle brand, and you're trying to pay you're trying to make sure your payment's on time, and you can't find it, right? This could be an issue, especially if it ends up creating a late payment for you. So, but this is great example of something, that Volkswagen could have addressed from a design perspective. So it's not forcing the user to make an error. Labels should be clear and easy to understand. I don't know if anybody uses Medium, but Medium has decided not to use a hamburger menu, but put all of their controls under your name icon. So here's somebody named Jay Ferranti, and all the features that maybe typically are under a hamburger menu are under the user's name icon. And that's the way you sign out too. I don't know if other folks have experienced that, where you're trying to sign out of an application and it's clear that they don't want you to sign out because it's so difficult to discover the sign out button. So I think Medium is probably also another great example of that. All right, let's check out another example. Too many options. Oh my goodness. This is Airbnb. Airbnb had this great announcement not too long ago. They said, hey, we're redesigning our website. We're introducing this new concept called categories. So I don't know if you've gone through Airbnb recently, but there are these categories, as you can see. Let's look at the top example here. It says mansion, surfing, lakefront. You can search places by these categories. I went through that, and the categories kept going on and on and on. I only put 4 images here. I mean, they just keep going. So I don't know when it even stops. My favorite was the OMG category here. As you can see, there's a little alien spaceship. That's awesome. But yeah, so if you can imagine trying to find, unless you know specifically what you're looking for, right? You might get kind of lost in categories, just like you do when you're trying to find a show to watch on Netflix or Amazon Prime. You just end up spending 30 minutes scrolling through the list if you don't know exactly what you want to watch. So example of egress, improperly marked entry can take you to the wrong place. Another, I don't know why Robinhood is showing up here time and again, but there's on the top right a rewards button. You click on rewards, it doesn't take you to rewards, it takes you to a promo button where you can invite your friends for free stocks. So let's not take the user to if there's rewards. I mean, if you're a first time user of this app, you would think, hey, man, maybe I earned something. Maybe I did something really well and I earned something. And it turns out you didn't. There's more work for you to do if you want to earn something. Access. Oh, this is the Post-it app. I'm not sure if this has changed. You can see the date. This is from 2021. I love the Post-it app. The 3M developed this. I'm sure if you're in the UX world, you do a lot of journey mapping. I do a lot of journey mapping. This is an example of a exercise I did with some customers. All you do is you point your camera with this app, and it actually takes a picture of all your Post-it notes and reformats it into digital form. Only problem is it comes up as a PNG, and I can't export it, or at least I couldn't at the time export it to Sketch. I don't think I was using Figma at the time, or Figma. So it's kind of exciting that this app exists and this tech is there, but it would be better if you could actually if they had OCR, optical character recognition, to transpose that image text into actual digital text. So, but that maybe it's available, and if it is, let me know. Drop a line. I just maybe need to update my app now, but it was not available in the past. But at least you could take this and organize it, but still had to spend time copying the text down into a Sketch file or a Figma file. So, the name of the app was Post-it. I'm pretty sure it's Post-it, 3M. So you can do a quick search for Post-it, like the 3M Post-its, and it should come up. Yeah, take a look. Saves you. You think it's going to save you a lot of time, but maybe not. So, let me know if it's better. Preventive maintenance. So I talked about like one way to really reduce error is to have a rigorous research program, like do discovery research so you understand what your customers are trying to do, their end goals, their unmet needs and pain points existing in the current state, because it's so much easier to work backwards from that and end up creating a design that actually works for your customers. Of course, even with the greatest intent, we sometimes induce error causing situations, but that can be minimized, right, through testing and sharing with your customer, getting feedback from them. This is a photo I took. Brock's probably really familiar with this. I did a workshop with a local Rotary club, Minneapolis City of Lakes Rotary. One of the goals for the club was to find out how to get more members to come to the club, join the club. And we had a big suspected, a hypothesis we had was that people didn't even know what Rotary was. So we invited a few, like I think it was 10, 12 prospective folks that are interested in social service and giving back to the community, people that are inclined to that, to see what they thought of Rotary. And part of the exercise we did this, we created a mural here, like of our perception of what Rotary is. And you can see the participants thought of Rotary as a swanky club where people with a lot of money show up, smoke cigars, drink fine wine, and wear fancy hats, which is far from the truth. But that allowed the club to understand that there was a perception issue and focus on changing the perception and designing solutions geared towards that. Value of discovery research is incredible, and it really helps you design something really targeted for your customers. So encourage you to do that. Example of fatigue: increased cognitive load with processing text. This is Alibaba.com. And so if you want to find battery chargers, you kind of have to go hunting and spend a little extra time trying to find where those are. I'm sure you could type in battery chargers in the search bar too and find it, but working through their menus is an issue. Staffing levels. This is from a human factors website. This is something as a human factors engineer, you definitely keep a pulse on as well, but something in your workspace too, if you're noticing there's a lot of absentee due to stress, fatigue, there might be, a staffing level issue. There's so much information one person can handle. I'm sure you guys have noticed that you have probably more work than you can handle by yourself, or you're doing 3 people's job all by yourself. So empathize with you. But if your designs are causing situations or errors for your customers, know that, might not be directly your fault, even at the best intentions, because there's so much information that we're trying to handle and manage. Maybe some things slip through the cracks, but something to definitely be aware of, and maybe pay extra attention to during when you're testing your software, testing your product, to see if the fact that you're taking on more work than you can handle, is that causing any issues related to error-inducing conditions. Okay, that is all I have. So we have actually plenty of time, which is great, Andy. So I think the next 40, what is it? 40. For the next 10 minutes, we're going to break up into groups once again and try to identify as many latent conditions as we can. So Andy, if we could break folks off into, I don't know how many people are, 17 folks. 2 or 3. Again, I think that'd be great. A couple of websites that I've given here: penguinmagic.com. This website is very overwhelming. It's a website that teaches you how to be a magician. Very interesting. You can go to target.com, NASA. I gave these because, these are websites we probably are really familiar with, target.com, and then NASA. We feel like we have to have high expectations of a site that is all about rocket and science, but I was actually surprised by how unusable their website is. So feel free to check that one out too. If there's actually something that you are working on that you want to kind of test related to any latent conditions that may have, feel free to use that. And then when we come back to the group, if you want to share it with the team, maybe we could help you identify how to address some of those issues. So With that, let's break up into groups of 2 or 3. Spend the next 10 minutes either visiting these 3 websites, penguinmagic.com, and I'll drop it in the chat here too, target.com or nasa.gov, or something that you are personally working on. Let's go ahead and check those out, and I'll let Andy break us into groups. Thanks,
Okay,
Andy.
here we go. And you'll get a notification when we're ready to rejoin the main group. That was actually kind of funny, Sangam, when you made the announcement that we were going to split up into groups. I was looking at the list of attendees and saw a couple people quietly drop out.
Maybe folks don't like the group activity. That's all right.
Yeah, you always wonder, but never know. Like, maybe they're in a place where they just can't do that, or they got a meeting coming up, or whatever. But yeah, kind of chuckled when I saw that. Like, no thanks, not right now.
That's totally fine.
Totally fine. Yeah.
This is just you and I here. Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and it looks like we wound up with 2 groups of 4 and 2 groups of 3. Oh, but you're assigned to one of them. That's weird. I thought you still were marked as a co-host. Well, I don't want to move anyone now, but
yeah, that's okay. I'm still here. Yeah. Cool.
I think I'll join that room that only has 2 people in it. I think I can still see the group chat. So if you just want to drop a note in there when you want me to close the rooms, I'll keep an eye on that.
Okay. Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Andy, can you hear me? I'm not sure if you can, but if we can come back, that'd be great. Let's see.
Hello.
Hi, how's it going?
I accidentally clicked the button because I was trying to do something else. I was
That's
trying
okay.
to full screen and then it's like breakout rooms and then gone.
Yeah, that's okay. And it's funny, I'm trying to pull everyone back, but I'm not the admin for this meeting, so I can't pull folks back. And I had said 10 minutes. Oh no, we're at 15. That's okay. What was your name?
Mara,
Mara, nice to meet you. I'm Sangam.
nice to meet you.
Thanks for joining us in the workshops.
Yeah, it's been great. I was just showing everybody Yop Mail. I don't know if you've ever used it, but when you're wanting to sign up for something fake, we used to use it at my last job for testing to
Oh,
make
sure.
sure email things would go through.
Yeah.
because you can use it in like beta environments and,
Oh,
you know,
sure.
test environments. And so I was just trying to show my team, my group Yop
Yeah.
mail,
Oh, okay.
and
Cool.
the thing popped up just as I was clicking share.
Oh, sure. Oh, that's okay.
Oof,
Oh yeah, that's what we thought happened to you.
Uh-oh.
Let's see. Andy, are you back?
I am back, and everyone should be back now.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Yeah, I see. Looks like we have 15 folks. Yeah, we're coming up on time here. But does anyone want to, Mara and I were just talking about a website that she was sharing with her group. Does anyone want to share anything that really stood out to them related to latent conditions for the sites that you were visiting? Can you give us some examples? We can touch on that for just a few minutes here. I can share my screen.
So we kind of got hung up on penguinmagic.com.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone had ever seen it before. And it was just like, you know,
What is
like,
going on,
what do
right?
you do here? Yeah. It's like, what is this website even? And like the navigation, you know, I think it took some time to figure out where that was exactly. And
Sure.
it's just, I don't even know how to unpack everything that was going on there.
I figured you guys would have some fun with that. Yeah, it's overwhelming to say the least. Yeah, I learned about it at some workshop too, as well. It was some marketing workshop, I think. And they were talking about how amazing this website was. But I thought, I think my
Amazing in a bad way.
exactly. I think my UX friends would disagree.
Why did they think it was good?
I think they like the content. So if you are really into a magic, I guess I have not personally bought any of the courses, but evidently they break down different tricks in a way that makes it easy to digest as a, aspiring musician. That's what I've been told.
But there's like no perceivable organization to the site. Like, how do you even find things?
Maybe if you're a magician or aspiring magician, that's part of the game. I don't know. I don't have an answer for it.
I think the most glaring thing was like it said shop at the top. One of our team members pointed this out. It said shop at the top and like big weird rectangle, and you click it and nothing changes. Like it's just the same page.
Oh,
The whole
wow.
page.
And then like it has account. Oh no, it has my penguin, which is literally the same thing as account. So if you click between the two, it's the same thing. And if you go to what you think will be a different page, it still has this weird frame that never disappears. And so you're like, wait, I thought I was going to a different page. And you're like, oh, I guess this is the different page, but it doesn't feel like a different page. It's like
Sure.
the thing that changed is small, and yeah,
It's part of the illusion.
It is definitely part of the illusion. But if you're trying to make sales, right? If you're trying to increase your sales, maybe engagement even on your website, yeah, somebody needs to pay a little more attention because they probably could do a better job, especially if the courses are really good. Let's imagine the courses are the best that are out there. There's a lot of improvement in the entry to those courses, I think, that we all observed. Josh said it's pretty amazing how it's chaotic. Yeah, for sure. Cool. I know it's 1 o'clock. The last thing I was going to do, I'll just share it. We don't have to get to it, but this is related to the first thing I had asked the group to do. But you can do this on your own and you can imagine what the answer is going to be. But the last thing we're going to do is, again, go back to that 9/11 memory or a memory that you decided to pick and spend 2 minutes writing down everything that you remember. And that's, we're a day apart from the first time you wrote those things down. And the idea was to kind of compare and contrast, even within a day, recalling something that, is almost 20 years old, a little over 20 years old, how close to, close or different those memories are. And of course, we cannot rely on memory to solve anything. And that research has been done time and again, but that was the last activity I had. So I'm happy to hang around for a moment or two if anyone wants to talk about anything, if you have any questions, but this has been an absolute pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much for the engagement. I think part of what makes these things super fun is when everyone participates and, we kind of discuss things that are either super familiar or if we've learned something anything brand new or just, jogged our memory too, for that matter. So once again, yeah, thanks everyone for joining. I had a lot of fun. Hopefully you had some fun too. And yeah, I'll hang around if anybody wants to stick around for any questions or comments.
I did download Post-it, and
Did you?
it lets you export to a whole bunch of different things now.
Awesome. Okay. That's
So
cool.
I can even export to like Excel.
No way. Really?
Yeah.
And you can edit it, of course, once it's exported to Excel.
That I did not see.
Yeah. That'd be cool.
But
It lets you
yeah,
edit.
it looks like you can export to a whole bunch of different things. So I
Cool.
thought I'd let you know.
Yeah, save some time when you're doing in-person journey mapping. Oh,
Yeah, or how might we boards. I
Sure,
thought
yeah.
that would actually be perfect for the how might we, because
Mm.
everybody writes on your sticky note and then you put them on a wall, and then everybody's like, oh, don't forget to capture that.
Right.
So
Yeah, absolutely.
perfect. Thanks.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Yeah, enjoy the weather while it lasts.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
I was wondering if I find that it's kind of hard to find websites that are very well designed, like, or apps that are really well designed. So sometimes when I'm looking for inspiration, I'm like, where should I go? And I guess I was just wondering, like, are there any websites or apps that you're like, wow, this is doing everything that I wish it would do, and this is a good example to follow,
Yeah, I feel like that's a tricky question, right? Because depending on who your customer is, right? Like an app that might seem, or a website that might not seem intuitive for us may be like super user friendly, right? Yeah, like, but if you're talking about visual design, right, like that's, I think in terms of just visual design, is the layout neat? Yeah, I think Airbnb used to be good, I would say, until they
They have
introduced
visual design, but now
and until they introduced those categories. I love Canva, like the website I use to build the deck. They actually have an app, and I don't know if you use the app or not, but I'm amazed at how much you can do in the app, like building out your PowerPoint deck, for instance. It's pretty slick. Canva's pretty good. I'm just looking through my list here in terms of which ones I like. Wealthfront is a good one. It's a robot broker. Like, yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's kind of like a E-Trade, you can invest in, yeah, it's like an e-commerce website. They're decent. I don't interact with that like on a daily basis. So the times I do visit it, it's manageable. Yeah. Who I've been super surprised by lately is Delta, the Delta app.
oh yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that's super impressive is now, let's say you check in, or you're even at the airport, MSP airport, you can find out how long it's going to take you to get to your gate. And they have an internal map, not like a GPS map, but an internal map of, like, for example, MSP airport, and they'll do an estimate of how long it'll take you to get to your gate. So there's actual map of the airport itself and the terminals. I think that's really neat. So Delta's definitely stepped up their game.
And that was through their app.
Yeah, delta.com. It's hard to see that capability unless you're actually checking in. So maybe next time you're flying, take a look at that. It gives you an estimate, and also gives you like shows you an accessibility. So if you're in a wheelchair, like how much longer that might take, for instance. So from an accessibility standpoint, I think they're doing a lot of good work there too. So yeah, I think those are probably some good examples. Do you have any, Paige, that stand out to you?
I usually, when I'm looking at like visual design, I usually look at like stuff like DoorDash or Airbnb, just because I like the style. But as far as what I like, I don't know. I guess Lyft has really nice design and tends to work the way you think it will. I think Uber kind of has too much going on now, where you have to kind of keep clicking into things because they have so many options. But any app where there's like, I noticed recently that like any app where there's like a singular purpose to the app, like they're going to be like really slick, but like any app where like they've become like this bigger thing where they like do a bunch of different things, it's going to be harder to navigate. Just
Yep.
because of the nature of, okay, now we do everything, kind of like,
Right.
for example.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a difficult decision, I feel like, if you're a product owner to make, right? Uber used to just be rides, and then they introduced Uber Eats, and that got crazy. And I think initially, if you're a driver and if you're a passenger, the app was the same, and they decided to split it right afterwards because it just was too much. I'm pretty sure. And then they went back to combining it again or something crazy like that. Yeah.
Did they?
It's
Oh.
yeah, it's crazy. So those are definitely tough decisions that you have to make, right? I think at the end of the day, if you ask the question, okay, who is this for and what is this for, right? And work backwards from that, who is this for, and decide that, yes, this is exactly who this is for. This app is for passengers only, and we're going to work backwards from them. And anything we build, anything we put in here is only for passengers. If you say that, then it's easier to say, okay, you know what, we got to build a completely new app for drivers, but then that costs a little more money, right? More dev resources. So it's a constant battle. But yeah, I don't know. I think you just have to decide what you want to prioritize and then kind of go after that and be able to defend it. So yeah, it's
That's one
difficult.
of the things I like about my current company. Like they they are very focused on I head up the UX team for their app, and it's all focused on the user and retention. It's all about retention, right? And what does she really need to do? And how can we make that easy for her so that she keeps coming back over and over? And I've never worked for a company that focused so intensely on a user post-purchase and making sure that her experience post-purchase is so top-notch.
What company do you work for again?
Sleep
Mara?
Number. I work for Sleep Number.
Sleep Number. Okay, cool. Yeah.
So buy a $10,000 bed and you will get a wonderful experience. But we're
God.
yeah. They just launched a new bed that the Climate 360 allows you to make your own microclimate in the bed. So you and your spouse can sleep in different temperature zones. So it's kind of awesome. So like my husband sleeps super hot. He's always hot and I'm always cold. So I could have the heater on and he can have the cooler on. So it's kind of amazing, but their attention to detail around the app and all of the things that we're trying to do to help people get better sleep is kind of amazing.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, great to hear that they want to work backwards from their customer. That's good. I remember
especially when it's post-purchase, right? So many people are focused on getting people in the door and getting you to buy, and then they're like, okay, thanks, goodbye. And their Sleep Number is really focused on making sure that after your purchase, you're still really happy and satisfied, and that you're using this app every day to get better sleep. It's kind of mind-blowing for me. So
sure. Yeah, I like it. Make sure you have those return customers too. Keep them happy and they'll talk about the product like you just did yourself. It's a win-win.
I was a customer before I ever started working there. So
okay, great. That's awesome. Yeah, gone are the days when you have to worry about hot pillows. I remember when I was younger, sleeping on one side of the pillow, it gets super warm and you'd have to flip the pillow. I don't know if you ever did that, but I was always doing that. I guess you don't have to do that anymore. Awesome.
Well, I have to peel off for another meeting, but
okay. Yeah.
Have a great Friday.
Yeah. Have a great Friday. Have a great weekend. Nice to meet you all. Take care.
I'm gonna head out too.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Andy, do you need anything from me?
Nope. Let's wrap it up. Thanks. Great job.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Let me know if you have any feedback, good or bad. I'm always trying to make things better. So feel free to email it to me or just text me, whatever, if there is any feedback. And then, appreciate you giving me a chance.
Yeah, sure thing. We'll pass along anything we hear from the attendees. Have a great weekend. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.